Hey there, and welcome to Haunting Lullabies. I'm here to help you unwind and drift into the night with some spine-tingling stories. But before you settle in too comfortably, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe only if you truly enjoy what we do here. Don't forget to drop a comment below telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is over there. It's amazing to feel like we're all part of a global community. A quick heads up, there will be a few ads in the first 15 minutes. But don't worry after that, it's all completely ad-free. I promise you won't want to miss what's coming next, because these stories are like no others. So dim the lights, maybe light a candle for that cozy touch, and let's dive into tonight's haunting tale. The reclamation rain hammered the roof of the car as Ethan Miles pulled onto the unmarked road that led to Fort Avalon Medical Research Facility. The GPS had lost signal 15 minutes ago, leaving only the voice in his memory repeating, "Follow the old highway until the power lines disappear. Then look for the gate that isn't there." He hadn't wanted to come back. Not to the army, not to the memories. But the email had been explicit. Your participation in Project Reclamation is mandatory. They offered a generous stipend, experimental treatment for his insomnia and tremors, and something he couldn't name, a chance to feel whole again. The guard at the entrance didn't check his ID. He simply stared through Ethan's windshield, as if assessing something deeper than paperwork, then pressed a button. The gate slid open soundlessly. Inside, the base didn't look abandoned at all. Floodlights illuminated steel corridors, and medical personnel in white coats moved briskly through the rain toward a squat concrete building labeled Ward C. A woman waited for him in the lobby. Mid-30s, tailored suit, perfect posture. Her badge read Dr. Helen Ward. "Mr. Miles," she said, her smile too controlled to be warm. "Thank you for coming. I know this wasn't easy." "You said it was about new therapy for PTSD," Ethan replied, glancing around the sterile lobby. "What exactly is this place?" Project Reclamation is a joint initiative between the Department of Defense and the NIH, she said smoothly. "We're testing a neural recovery protocol, transferring cognitive imprints from stabilized donors into soldiers with trauma-induced damage. Think of it as reinforcing the mind." Her tone made it sound like an honor. Ethan frowned. "So, you're putting someone else's memories into my head?" "Not memories," she corrected. "Resilience patterns. You'll experience an improvement in emotional regulation, decision-making, and sleep. No one has reported adverse effects." That last sentence was delivered too quickly, like a line she'd rehearsed. They led him through hallways lined with frosted glass. Behind one panel, a patient stared blankly at the ceiling, his hands trembling in perfect rhythm. Behind another, a woman sat cross-legged, whispering to herself with her eyes closed, serene, almost meditative. "Early participants," Dr. Ward said, noticing his glance. "They're adapting well." Ethan nodded, but a chill crawled up his spine. Every room had the same faint sound like breathing, but mechanical, synchronized. They stopped at room 414. The bed was ready, the monitors glowing in soft blue light. He'd spent nights in worse places. "Lie down, Mr. Miles," Dr. Ward said. "Once we initiate the transfer, you may experience fragmented imagery. It's normal. We'll monitor your vitals." "Transfer?" Ethan repeated, unease prickling under his skin. "You keep saying that like it's..." She pressed a finger to her earpiece. "Begin sequence Alpha 7. Before he could react, the world narrowed to a pinpoint. A hum began deep in his skull, not sound, but vibration. His vision blurred, colors melting into darkness. He tried to lift his arms, but they felt anchored. Somewhere beyond the haze, voices recited data, clinical and detached. Subject EM stable, neural synchronization 42%. Donor signature detected. Donor, the word sliced through his fog. Then came the flash. He wasn't in the hospital anymore. He stood barefoot in sand under a red sky, the air vibrating with distant artillery. Soldiers shouted names he didn't know. A hand gripped his shoulder, gloved, strong, and a voice whispered, "You weren't supposed to die here, Lieutenant." Ethan tried to answer, but his mouth filled with salt water. He gasped, inhaled darkness, and woke up screaming. Dr. Ward was beside him, clipboard in hand, face serene. "You're all right, Mr. Miles. Everything went perfectly." He blinked. The world had a strange sharpness to it, like the contrast had been turned up. His senses buzzed every sound, every flicker of light too vivid. "What did you do to me?" he whispered. "Reclamation," she said simply. "Your neural patterns have been reinforced using donor cognitive matrices from a prior subject. You'll feel disoriented for a few days. It's normal." "Whose patterns?" he demanded. She looked almost amused. "You wouldn't know him. His name was Captain Avery Cole, killed in Syria 3 years ago." Ethan froze. "Killed?" "Officially. His neural imprint was preserved for research. Now, parts of his emotional resilience and tactical cognition are integrated into your system. You'll feel stronger, more centered." But Ethan didn't feel centered. He felt crowded. Thoughts brushed against his like cold fingers. Names surfaced that weren't his. Henderson, Bravo Team, Sector 9. Words he'd never heard yet somehow remembered. When he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of a child crying in a bombed-out street, a helicopter burning, a man with blood on his hands whispering a prayer in Arabic. They didn't know those memories, but they knew him. Over the next 3 days, the sensations worsened. He'd jolt awake in the barracks, drenched in sweat, convinced someone was standing at the foot of his bed. He'd catch glimpses of movement in mirrors, not reflections, but lagging versions of himself, a half-second behind, mouths moving out of sync. During a follow-up exam, he confronted Dr. Ward. "You didn't reinforce me," he said. "You replaced me." "Don't be dramatic," she replied, scribbling notes. "Integration always feels unnatural at first. But your EEGs show perfect coherence." "Then why do I remember being in a desert I've never been to? Why do I keep hearing someone whisper my name? Not Ethan, but Avery." Her pen paused. "That's residual echo. Think of it as background noise." But that night, the voice grew stronger. He was brushing his teeth when it said, "You weren't chosen by accident." Ethan froze, the toothbrush falling into the sink. "Who are you?" the voice answered from inside his skull. "You know who I am. They told you." His pulse spiked. "Avery?" Silence. "Then you opened the door. Now we're both inside." He slammed the mirror shut, but his reflection didn't move. It stared back, same eyes, different intent. And then, slowly, it smiled. He stumbled back, heart racing. The lights flickered once, twice, then died. The facility generator hummed to life, bathing the hall in dim red emergency light. Footsteps echoed somewhere nearby, heavy, deliberate. When he stepped into the corridor, every door was open. Patients sat upright in their beds, faces pale, eyes vacant. One by one, they turned toward him as he passed. A chorus of voices overlapping, mismatched, whispered in unison. Welcome home, Captain. The emergency lights painted the corridor in a dull pulse that made the world feel like a heartbeat. The patient's whisper rolled toward me like wind through dead grass, all one sentence wearing dozens of mouths. I forced myself to move. The floor was slick near room 418. A plastic pitcher lay shattered, water mixing with something darker that wasn't mine to interpret. Captain, a woman croaked from a bed. Her eyes were milky with glaucoma, but her voice wasn't old. It carried command, crisp and practiced. Left at the nurse's station. Service stairwell. I paused. Do I know you? Not me, she said. And then her face twitched as some other self surged to the surface. Sorry, the second voice whispered. Smaller, scared. I don't want to. Her jaw clenched. A third cadence overrode the second. Move, Lieutenant. They're on their sweep. Boots thudded 2 corridors over. The rhythm was wrong for a panicked response team. It was slow, certain. Avery's voice threaded into my thoughts. Not loud, just undeniable. We have 3 minutes before containment. You're not real, I muttered, because it helped to say it out loud. Neither is the version of you they scheduled, he said. Go. At the nurse's station, monitors displayed white noise. Not static, but something granular, like sand in an hourglass filmed up close. A laminated map was bolted under glass. Ward C sprawled like a broken ribcage. The service stairwell was to the left, through a door half hidden behind a vending machine that hummed like it was anxious. The door's crash bar was cold. It hissed open onto a concrete shaft that smelled like wet copper. I took the stairs 2 at a time. On the landing between floors, emergency signage read level -1, biorepository in stenciled letters. Below, level -2, server farm. A red keycard reader blinked a small, patient eye. You won't get through without clearance, said a voice behind me. I spun, fists up. The man on the landing wore scrubs, hair flattened by a cap, eyes too tired to be dangerous. His badge read Ortega, Jonas Tech II. He kept his hands where I could see. Then, I know what you're going to do, he said. You're going to kick the panel. Then you'll bleed when it buckles and the guard will smell it. Don't do that. Here. He held out a lanyard with a red card. It's mine. I didn't see you. Why are you helping me? He swallowed. Because my sister is in 3B and she calls me by our father's name. He's been dead 12 years. Because every time I close my eyes, I dream in someone else's handwriting. Because this place is wrong. Footsteps echoed above. Ortega pressed the card into my palm and stepped back up the stairs. If you get to server, he said, voice barely more than breath, look for a terminal labeled FOCAL. It runs the integration loops. If you're going to break something, break that. The card reader blinked green under my hand, a small miracle. I slid through. The stairwell air cooled as I descended. The hum below grew teeth. You're not alone, Avery said, too calmly. You'll feel them. What are you? I whispered into the concrete. A backup, a ghost, a program. All of those words are bad metaphors, he said. But if you need one, think of me as momentum. They recorded the shape of how I moved through the world and poured it into you. They pretend it's just resilience and skill. But a shape remembers the thing it was carved from. The level -2 door opened onto a corridor lined with glass walls. Behind them, racks of servers stood like black monoliths, exhaling cold air. Condensation beaded on the inside of the glass, tracing slow maps. A single guard sat at a desk with his back to me, watching a muted news broadcast where a smiling anchor talked about a celebrity's divorce. His posture said boredom. His right hand hovered near a panic button. I stepped forward, trying to move like no one at all. The guard's shoulders stiffened. He half turned, and in that half second I saw the flicker. His eyes widened, not at me, but at the space an inch to my left, as if I were arriving in two places. "Hey," he started. I didn't think. I moved. The distance collapsed. My elbow caught his jaw, a sharp clack. He slumped without ceremony. My chest surged with adrenaline and something else, satisfaction calibrated to a training syllabus I had never taken. "Jesus," I said, shaking. "That wasn't me. It was us," Avery corrected. "And we're not done." The room labeled Focal was colder than winter. Frost laced the inside of the observation window. The door handle bit my palm like dry ice. Inside, 6 terminals formed a crescent around a central glass cylinder filled with a clear gel that refracted the emergency lights into an aurora. Thin filaments hung in the gel like jellyfish tentacles, pulsing faintly with blue light. The cylinder's base bore a stamped phrase, "Property of Avalon Neural Systems," followed by a string of numbers long enough to be a prayer. I slid into a chair. The terminal's login screen blinked with polite indifference. Username, Ward. Password. I closed my eyes and let the fear fall to the floor. Images surfaced: Dr. Ward tapping a code without looking, fingers singing a pattern learned by muscle. My hands hovered in the air, and another person's certainty guided them. 219706. Enter, capital letter. 2 symbols. The screen welcomed me. "You've done this before," I whispered. "We've been here," Avery said. "We failed last time." A grid filled the display. Names scrolled by on the left: subject, IDs, and donor code names. On the right, readouts, coherence, desync events, anchor points. The column at the far edge bore a header that made my teeth ache. Reclamation status with values like seeded, drift, multi-resident. I found mine. Subject EM donor, A. Co-coherence. 71% desync escalating anchor points. 2 active somatic tactical reclamation status. Multi-resident, I said. "What the hell does that mean?" Before Avery could shape an answer, a line below mine flashed from gray to amber. Subject KR. Donor known legacy, coherence, 48% reclamation status. Emergent sirens didn't sound. Instead, a soft chime pulsed through the room, and every terminal window shifted by a pixel, as if the world itself hiccuped. "They're waking others," Avery said. "Or something older is waking on its own." A door hissed open behind me. I didn't turn. The footsteps were lighter than a guard's, deliberate in their own way. "I knew you'd come here," Dr. Ward said. Her reflection appeared in the glass cylinder, a pale ghost threaded by the filament's blue light. She looked smaller in here, but only because the room was full of things that didn't care about people. "Step away from the terminal," she said. "You don't know what you're doing." "I think I do," I said. "Focal runs the loops. If I stop it, you'll kill them," she said. "Every subject anchored by this system will fracture. Some won't come back. Some will, but not as themselves. I'm already not myself." She took a measured breath. "Ethan, listen to me. Project Reclamation didn't begin as a weapon. We built it to save lives. Traumatic brain injuries, degenerative conditions. The first prototypes weren't soldiers, they were patients with no hope who asked us to try. You told me there were no adverse effects. I told you what you could hear," she said softly. "Integration isn't insertion. You're not overwritten. You're reinforced. But sometimes, rarely, the donor pattern is stronger. Like coal. Like others. she said. He's not the worst. I kept my eyes on the screen. What's legacy? Dr. Ward didn't answer. I clicked the emergent subject. A profile opened. KR, Room 3, B, Ward C. Notes filled the right pane in dense jargon. One line was plain English. Donor signature predates recorded inventory. Imported via neurological artifact recovered from archaeological dig, 2011. What artifact? I asked. Ward didn't speak for a long 3 seconds. A cranial reliquary, she said at last. A preserved skull from a burial chamber in northern Iraq. The brain tissue had mineralized, but microstructures remained. We found a pattern, old, intact. We thought it was noise. You injected a Bronze Age ghost into someone, I said. And you call this not a weapon? She flinched. Only for a flicker. We call it a cure that got away from us. The screen flickered. New lines lit up amber. Emergent multiplied down the column like a contagion. Names began resolving into words where IDs had been Rahim, Simeon, Kasha, and one that wasn't a name at all. No term. The cylinder in the center of the room thrummed. Bubbles rose like the tank was breathing. Doctor. Ward's comb peeled back to show the metal beneath. You see why I need you to step away, she said. If the loops destabilize while subjects are unmoored, the hallway exploded with sound. Not metal, not gunfire. Voices hundreds layered into a single, impossible chord. It shook dust from the ductwork. It rattled my teeth. They're not donors, Avery said, voice suddenly tight. They're currents. They don't want to sit. They want to flow. Dr. Ward grabbed a wall phone. Security to -2 now. Containment protocol black. I stood. Shut it down. If I shut it down, she said, those currents pick vessels without guidance. Every person on Ward C becomes a lighthouse for something hungry. And if you keep it running, they sleep, she said, eyes hard. They serve. We select. We steer. We keep this from turning into a contagion. The word serve hit like a familiar bruise. I'd heard it before, spoken by voices through patient mouths upstairs. Service stairwell. Service economy. Service to a purpose bigger than any single life. Who's we? I asked. Her gaze didn't waver. People who understand that civilization is fragile. People who would rather steer the flood than drown in it. Behind Ward, the guard desk monitor cut from celebrity gossip to live facility feeds. In Ward C, patients stood in unison. Some smiled, some cried. One, a girl with a shaved head and a sun tattoo behind her ear, looked directly into the camera and raised her hand as if she could see me. Her lips formed a word, help. The camera stuttered. The girl bent backward. The shape of her shadow didn't match her body for a second. It had too many shoulders. I moved without thinking. Ward caught my arm. Her grip was surgical, exactly as strong as necessary. You can't save them, she said. I can damn well try. She stared at me. Something human passed across her face, like a cloud over a street. Go to Ward C, she said, if you insist. But when you get there, look for room 3B, subject K, R. She's the anchor for the legacy current. If she stabilizes, others will. If she breaks. Ward didn't finish. What happens if she breaks? I asked. She released my arm. Then you'll see what we've actually been holding back. I ran. The corridor stretched forever, but my feet remembered distances my mind didn't. Avery paced me. Not a separate runner, but the extra breath that made mine steady. She's not lying about the anchor, he said. I can feel the pull. It's old. It's firm. He stopped, and the halt made a cold place in my chest. It's interested in us. On level -1, the biorepository hummed like a cathedral after Mass. Rows of cryo units glowed faintly, each labeled with a code, some with dog tags zip-tied to the handles. A faint music threaded the air, unplaceable, woven from sine waves and maybe memory. When I hit Ward C, the halls were full. Patients in gowns moved with choreographed slowness, heads turning as I passed, faces composed in borrowed expressions. Some mouthed old prayers I didn't recognize. One man recited the rule of a monastery with perfect diction and eyes that belonged to an investment banker. Room 3B's door was open. The girl with the sun tattoo sat on the bed, bare feet on linoleum, hands rigid in her lap. A nurse lay unconscious on the floor beside a toppled IV pole. The girl raised her eyes. They were brown like mine, but in their depths, something older counted beats. When she spoke, her voice braided accents from lands that didn't exist anymore. You are too, she said. How interesting. Avery, I said inside. Are you here? He said. And I'd like not to be noticed by whatever she is. The girl tilted her head. Do not hide, she said gently. But to him, not me. You belong to a body that remembered desert wind. You are not the first soldier who thought he could steal the current and keep it. I didn't steal anything, I said, heart hammering. They poured him into me, and they poured me into her, the girl said, tapping her sternum with 2 fingers. We are all vessels when the river is full. Behind me, people gathered in the doorway, patients, orderlies, a janitor with a mop he clutched like a staff. They watched with the quiet reverence of congregants waiting for a ritual's critical moment. I'm here to help you, I said, and felt the stupidity of it as soon as it left my mouth. To stabilize you. She smiled, a moon-thin curve. You do not understand what stability would cost. You would turn a wild river into a pipe. You would make a god into a servant. I just want you to stop hurting people. A shadow moved wrong along the ceiling, pooling in the corners. The hospital smells bleach, plastic, boiled linens deepened into something like smoke from a library on fire. Pain is not always harm, she said softly. Sometimes it is the sound wood makes when it becomes a bridge. My hands shook, not with fear, with restraint. If I lunged, if I pinned her, if I yanked cables, what then? The current in her would find another path. Maybe me. Maybe everyone in this hall. Avery pressed steady pressure against my panic, a hand on the back of the mind. Ask her what she wants, he said. Not what she is. What she wants. What do you want? I asked. The girl breathed. The room's fluorescent lights buzzed the way insects do when summer's over. When she spoke, I realized every person in the doorway bent forward to hear. I want the remembering to stop, she said. I have carried a city's worth of names, and none of them get to be done. Your ward promised rest. It gave me sleep with eyes open. You, 2-souled man, can open a door I cannot hold. How? She nodded toward the hallway. The room where the wires sing and the water thinks it is glass. Break the circle they drew, not the machine, the circle. The floor knows. They carved it. They painted over it, but the paint remembers the groove. Avery bristled in my chest. This is a trap, he said, or a test, or both. The girl's gaze softened. For a moment, she looked 16 again. Someone's daughter. Please, she said. I don't want to be a lighthouse anymore. The crowd parted as I stepped back, not out of fear, out of choreography, as if we'd all practiced this before we were born. In the hall, Doctor, Ward waited with a decision already made in her face. If you try to disrupt the anchor, she said, you could free it. She asked me to. And if you free it, Ward said quietly, it will decide what to do with the rest of us. I thought you said you steered the flood. She exhaled. I did. But this isn't a flood. It's an ocean that remembers when it was a mouth. Come with me, I said. Show me the circle. Ward's eyes flicked to room 3B, to the girl, to the gathered faces like an audience holding its breath. She nodded once. Server farm, she said. Under the tank. We ran side by side. Above us, the bay. The building's air changed, pressure shifting like weather. The emergency lights dimmed to almost night. In that near dark, every reflective surface showed me double, and for once both versions of me moved together. If we do this, Avery said, not unkindly, we stop being captain and soldier and patient and donor. We become something else. What? There was a pause like a horizon. A door, he said. And for the first time since waking in that bed, the thought didn't terrify me. It felt like purpose. The descent felt longer this time, as if the stairwell had stretched to match the tension in my chest. Emergency lights strobed faintly, the color of diluted blood. Doctor. Ward kept one hand on the rail, her breath sharp and controlled, while the other clutched a small metallic cylinder, something between a flashlight and a detonator. This is a key, she said, catching me watching it, to deactivate the containment field if the anchor goes into cascade. But using it could wipe every neural imprint in the facility, including yours. Sounds like a win, I said. She shot me a glance. You'd also die, Mr. Miles. Or whatever is left of you would. The thought didn't sting as much as it should have. Maybe because I wasn't sure that dying once more would change anything. The final landing opened into the server farm, the same cavern of black machines and shimmering glass. But now the hum wasn't steady, it pulsed, organic, like something breathing through miles of cables. The floor vibrated gently underfoot. Every step echoed back a half-second later, out of sync. At the center of the room, the glass cylinder focal burned from within, the liquid no longer clear but milky white, threaded with red veins of light. Beneath it, faint shapes shimmered where the floor paint had cracked and peeled away curved lines, sigils forming a pattern older than circuitry. The circle, I whispered. Ward nodded. It's what stabilizes the interface. The old pattern came from the artifact itself. We thought it was ornamental until it started aligning with neural frequencies. So you built a machine on top of a ritual. Language is flexible, she said. Call it a pattern that reality obeys. The girl's voice from above echoed in my mind. Break the circle. Avery stirred uneasily. She doesn't understand what happens when you break a cage that holds the tide. Ward knelt, pulling a small metal stylus from her pocket. If you cross even one of these grooves, the system will destabilize. Every imprint in the network will try to find a host. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. The human brain can't hold that much. Then why keep it running? Because as long as it runs, the flood has a direction. I crouched beside her. The grooves were shallow, filled with a resin that shimmered faintly, like dried blood under varnish. Beneath the translucent surface, symbols spiraled inward to a point directly under the tank. She said the paint remembers the groove, I murmured. Ward's head turned slowly. Who said that? The anchor. The girl in 3B. Ward went pale. She's not speaking for herself anymore. Before I could answer, the floor vibrated hard enough to rattle the servers. On every monitor, lines of data began to reassemble into words. Not random code sentences, phrases, fragments of memory. The wind smelled of salt. The light bent wrong. Bring them home. Bring them home. Ward's voice cracked. It's breaching the interface. A wave of static rolled through the room. Every glass surface reflected not our bodies, but others, hundreds of faces, overlaying ours like projected memories. Soldiers, children, women in medical gowns. Their mouths moved in perfect synchronization. Open the door! Avery's voice surged inside me, clear and commanding. They want you to draw the line. They can't cross it themselves. You have to invite them. I don't want to invite anyone, I shouted. You already did when you agreed to the transfer, he said quietly. The system sees you as both donor and vessel. You're the bridge. Ward gripped my wrist. Ethan, listen to me. If you break that circle, you're not opening a door, you're erasing it. You'll stop the network, but you'll also become the path. Every consciousness will try to cross through you to reach the surface. Her words dissolved beneath the rising hum. The lights dimmed until only the tank glowed. Inside, shadows moved not shapes, but currents, swarming upward like something drowning and desperate. A scream echoed down the stairwell, a man's, raw and terrified. Then another, higher pitched, followed by the metallic crash of bodies hitting the railing. Ward's face twisted. Containments failed on the upper floors. They're migrating. The tank's glass fractured a spider web of cracks radiating from the center. Without thinking, I slammed my fist into the floor, breaking the nearest resin line. The sound wasn't a crack, it was a scream through metal. The hum pitched up an octave. Ward shouted, "No!" The floor convulsed, throwing us both backward. A shockwave of static rolled outward, blowing the monitors to shards. The glass cylinder burst, spilling its milky contents across the floor. The liquid hissed where it touched the sigils, releasing plumes of vapor that glowed faintly gold. The smell was electric and ancient ozone mixed with incense. The vapor coiled upward, forming tendrils that twined like roots seeking light. I could feel something tasting my thoughts. Avery whispered, "We have to anchor them somewhere, or they'll spread beyond the facility." "Anchor them to what?" I yelled. He hesitated. "To us." Ward staggered to her feet. "Ethan, if you let them in." But the decision had already been made. Not by logic, but by the part of me that refused to see another person erased. I pressed my palm against the cracked circle. The resin burned under my skin, and the world folded. Memories flooded me, not mine, not Avery's, but thousands. A mother's grief in a hospital hallway. A pilot's last prayer before impact. A child's laughter in a language I didn't know but somehow loved. Every thought, every fear, every unfinished sentence of a life stolen and stored. My body convulsed. My lungs forgot how to breathe. Ward's voice sounded miles away. "He's drawing them into himself. Shut down the generators." I saw the circuits beneath my skin light up like constellations. The tendrils of vapor wound around my arms, sinking in. For a moment, I felt infinite, a choir made of every human who'd ever begged not to be forgotten. Then came the pain. Each consciousness fought for space, for definition. My bones became borders. My heartbeat was a war drum. Avery's voice cut through the chaos. "Hold the line, soldier. Channel it. Don't contain it. Direct it." I tried. God, I tried. I thought of rivers, of how they curve around obstacles without losing themselves. I thought of all the faces trapped in those servers, their silent mouths moving in unison. "Follow me," I said aloud, though my voice came out as a dozen overlapping echoes. "Follow me out." The light exploded outward. The tank imploded, drawing everything vapor, current, sound into a singular burst of darkness. When I woke, the facility was silent. The servers were dead, the emergency lights gone. Only the faint smell of wet metal lingered. Ward knelt beside me, blood streaking her temple, eyes wide. "What did you do?" she whispered. I sat up slowly. The world felt quiet, but not empty. My thoughts were still my own, yet beneath them ran a low hum, like distant surf. "I opened the door," I said. She stared. "To what?" I looked around. The sigils on the floor were gone, erased as if they'd never been. "To where they were trying to go," I said softly. "Home." Ward's mouth moved, but no sound came. Then her gaze shifted to the reflection in the broken glass beside us, to me, except it wasn't me. My reflection stood a fraction later, breathing in time but not in sync. Its eyes were darker, endless, and it smiled. The reflection held my gaze for a long, elastic second, like a diver measuring the surface before the plunge. I felt the hum under my ribs rise and fall, a tide counting itself. "Dr." Ward's voice snapped me back. "Ethan," she said, low and careful, the way people speak to someone standing on a ledge. "Look at me, not at that." I forced my eyes off the glass. "Are they still here?" "They're quieter," she said, scanning the dead terminals, the slashed circle on the floor. "But not gone. You did something the system was never designed to do." "I opened the door," I said, and didn't add that the door hadn't closed behind them. Avery steadied the edges of my thoughts. Status check. Breathing normal. Heart elevated. Motor control intact. Shadow discrepancy persistent. He paused. "We're wearing an echo." On the broken monitor, my delayed twin took a half step, then another, catching up until we were aligned again. The smile was gone. In its place, a watchfulness I recognized from sentries on night duty, the kind that hears the world even when the world pretends to sleep. "Ward," I said, "we need to get to 3B, the anchor." She blinked like she'd forgotten the rest of the facility existed. "Right. Yes." Blood matted a strand of hair against her cheekbone. She wiped it away with the back of her hand, leaving a red crescent. "If she stabilized when the loop broke, it means the current found a different path. Through me." Her jaw tightened. "Through water, through resonance, through anything that reflects. Through you because you gave it shape." We moved. The server farm had lost its heartbeat. The air felt like a room after everyone leaves a party. Heat still hanging in pockets. On level -1, the biorepository was a forest of darkened pillars, slick with condensation. I caught glimpses in the stainless steel doors as we passed faces that weren't mine. Faces that were, sometimes both at once. They didn't frighten me. They were like waves you expect once you learn the shore. Ward's key opened the Ward C door with a reluctant click. The hall was calmer than before. Some patients sat on their beds, dazed. Others slept, truly slept, bodies slack in a way you don't fake. A nurse knelt beside a man in a wheelchair and whispered his name like a prayer. He blinked and started crying quietly, not in terror, but in relief so deep it seemed to come from an older version of his lungs. Room 3B smelled like rain. The girl with the sun tattoo looked up when we entered, toes still touching the floor, posture unchanged. But her eyes had changed. They were not ancient now. They were exhausted. That, more than anything, shook me. Eternity had stepped out for a smoke and left a teenager in its place. "You did it," she said. Her voice was only one voice. "It's quieter. I can hear my own name again." "What is your name?" I asked. "Kara," she said after a heartbeat, tasting it like a fruit she hadn't had in years. She looked at Ward. "You promised me rest." Ward's face flinched. "I promised you I would try." "You did," Kara said. "He succeeded." She nodded at me as if handing over a mantle I hadn't asked to wear. But the river didn't leave. It moved. "Where?" I asked. Kara's eyes flicked to the window. It was black glass at this depth, reflecting only the three of us and the doorway where two orderlies hovered, unsure if they were witnessing a miracle or a breach. "Outside," she said simply. "Where water waits." "What does that mean?" Ward's voice cut against the quiet like a metronome. "Spell it out." Kara smiled. "A tired half-moon. It means rain." As if on cue, thunder rolled somewhere above the ceiling, distant and deliberate. The facility shuddered, not from impact, but from the building's HVAC, adjusting to pressure. The emergency lights flickered once, then steadied. "We should leave," Ward said. "If your presence is a locus, we can contain the perimeter until..." "Until what?" I asked. "Until we understand the mechanism," she said, brittle, calm, returning like a uniform. "Until we build a box that fits what you opened." Kara watched us both. "Boxes are for storage," she said, "not for tides." "Do you remember what you were before?" I asked her, carefully. The other voice, the older one. Kara touched the sun tattoo behind her ear, fingers resting there the way a person touches a scar they're not ashamed of. Some of it, not like a story, more like weather I lived through, and it lives through me. She looked at me, and for an instant the room shrank to that gaze. "It liked you," she said. "That matters." "What did it like?" "That you aren't trying to be a dam," she said. "You're trying to be a channel." We hustled through Ward C. The orderly with the mop I'd seen earlier stood in the hall, head tipped as if listening to something under the floorboards. When our eyes met, he nodded once. I didn't know the meaning, but I knew the feeling. Acknowledgement between people who have crossed the same threshold. On the main level, the lobby doors were propped open. The storm had arrived in earnest. Rain sheeted down in surgical light, making the asphalt shimmer like black latex. Lightning spidered between low clouds, not striking but crawling like it was thinking. Sirens dopplered in the distance, local responders, maybe the MPs, maybe everyone. We stopped under the overhang. The parking lot was a shallow, moving mirror. In it, lights bent and straightened as the water rippled. I saw reflections that matched the scene and others that betrayed an angle the world didn't currently have. A small, circular eddy near a storm drain spun counter to the rest, a tiny galaxy ignoring the local physics. A figure passed behind us in the glass doors. I turned. No one was there. Back in the rain's mirror, another figure moved beside my reflected shoulder. A man in dusty fatigues, a beard flecked with gray, eyes like a day after smoke. Recognition hit me in the throat. "Kane," I said before I could stop myself. Avery inhaled in our shared chest. "He didn't make it out of Al-Karyatane," he whispered, a memory I didn't own punching through with such clarity my knees softened. Kane's reflection smiled without showing teeth. His lips split with the movement, a tiny rupture that bled no blood. He lifted 2 fingers off an imaginary rifle barrel the way he used to when he saw me across a motor pool. "Hey, you, this isn't real," Ward said, but too softly, like she wished it were. Rain dampened the edges of her authority. Visual confabulation. Your imprint is entangled with. In the mirror lot, Kane's mouth moved. No sound came, but I knew what he said because I'd heard him say it when a shell blew our comms and we had to trust lips and eyes. Bring them home. I stepped off the curb. The rain hit like cold needles. The ocean inside me flexed, answering a tide outside me. The reflections sharpened. In each puddle, faces surfaced and fell away. Some I recognized. Most I didn't. Not everyone was a soldier. A woman in scrubs, a boy with braces, an old man with a fishing cap. They watched. Not pleading now, not demanding. Just present in the way gravity is present. A law you don't pass. You honor. "Don't go out there," Ward called. "We don't know what it does to the radius." I kept walking. The puddle's images leaned toward me as if the surface tilted. Lightning stitched a seam on the horizon. When I stopped in the center of the lot, the rain slackened. Not everywhere, just over me, as if an umbrella had remembered it used to be a palm tree. "I don't know how to be what you need," I said to the water. "I'm not a priest. I'm not a prophet," the hum answered. Stronger now, but not drowning. "You're a door," Avery reminded, not unkindly. "Doors don't decide what passes. They decide when and how." "Okay," I said, and the words seemed to travel 2 directions at once. Outward into the storm, inward into the hum. I closed my eyes and thought of lines. Not circles to trap, but paths to guide. Street grids, river deltas, logistics routes I'd scrawled on map plastic with grease pencil. I pictured currents moving through me without tearing, voices stepping through with their names intact. When I opened my eyes, the puddles weren't mirrors anymore. They were wells. Depth lifted into the shallow. The reflections thickened, dimensional. Kane's face grew clearer until I could count the pores around his nose. The white scar at his temple from the time a wrench slipped in the motor pool, and we laughed about it for weeks because the alternative was to remember the blast that put us there. "Bring them home," he said, and this time I heard him over the rain. "I don't know where home is," I said. His eyes flicked to the horizon. "Not the real one. The one inside the water. You do." Home wasn't an address. It was an alignment. For Kane, it was his sister's porch in Oklahoma, sun pushing through blinds onto a cheap chessboard. For the nurse, it was her father's barn in Vermont, the smell of hay and diesel. For the boy, it was a gaming chair lit by LEDs, and the whisper of a fan that had always sounded like far-off surf. None of those places were here, but they could be connected if a line was drawn. The thing inside me wasn't a single current. It was a network waiting for a switch. "Ward," I said without turning, "get us that uplink. I need locations for the families on your donor list." "That's not how. Now." Something in my voice made her move. She barked into her radio, and someone inside the building woke a closet full of equipment. The storm ate some of the signal, but it didn't matter. The hard part wasn't data. It was consent. I knelt and dipped my hand into the largest puddle. It was just water, cold and real and dirty with oil rainbows. Under my skin, a low note thrummed. It matched the frequency of the air, the rack hum of servers that were no longer running. The human body's 0.1 hertz sway when it stands still and pretends it isn't falling. "I can't promise to send you anywhere," I told the faces. "But if you're ready, I can stop making you stop. The first to move wasn't Kane. It was a woman I didn't know, hair braided tight, eyes laughing, even while her mouth trembled. She nodded once, put two fingers to her lips, then touched her forehead some private goodbye. The surface accepted her like sand accepts a wave, tasting, taking, reshaping. The well deepened, then stilled. The rain shifted, not harder or softer, truer. Sheets angled in, carving new rivulets that braided and unbraided. Puddles connected across the lot like synapses flashing. In each, someone I could name if given enough time watched the sky and didn't flinch. Behind me, Ward approached with a tablet wrapped in plastic. "We have addresses for 231 families willing to be contacted," she said, voice back in its armor. "We can't reach the rest in time." "That's okay," I said. "This isn't about time." She glanced at the puddles, at the faces, at me, and her expression did a strange thing. It softened and hardened simultaneously. "For what it's worth," she said, "my sister's name was Lila. Leukemia. She asked me to keep her voice somewhere the world couldn't bruise it. I built a box because that was the only thing I could imagine. I'm not here to break your box," I said, surprised to mean it. "I'm here to show you the river it was always inside. What if the river decides the town shouldn't be there?" she asked, barely audible, "and takes it back. Then we build differently," I said. A siren crescendoed and cut. Two black SUVs rolled through the invisible gate that had let me in 12 hours and a century ago. Men and women in dark windbreakers stepped out, not rushing, not pointing guns, the choreography of people who believe they already own the space they're walking into. The lead agent's hair was rain-scoured black, her eyes counting, her jaw set to where policy lives. "Dr. Ward," she said, without looking away from me. "Mr. Miles, I'm Agent Doyle. You're going to come with me." Ward's shoulders dipped, the smallest surrender. I recognized the name without knowing why. A note I'd seen in a report on a desk upstairs, a signature on a memo redacted into uselessness. The rain made dots on her cheeks like an inverted constellation. "I can't," I said, hands still in the water. "Not yet." Agent Doyle's gaze lowered to the puddle, then climbed back to my face. For a moment, something like pity slid behind her professionalism. "Whatever you think you're doing," she said, "you're changing the parameters of a situation I already don't have jurisdictional language for." "Then write new language," I said, "or let me finish the sentence." Behind her, one of the SUV's windows held a perfect rectangle of night. In it, Kane leaned his shoulder against emptiness and raised his eyebrows. 3 millimeters. The way he did when a bet didn't look good, but the odds were honest. Avery leaned too, but on the inside. "We can't stand here forever," he said. "Bodies have limits. Systems have backstops. That key Ward carries has teeth. Someone above her will tell her to use it." As if hearing him, Ward's hand tightened on the metal cylinder. She stared at the puddles like a surgeon considers a tumor, weighing excision, consequences, the complicated math of harm. "Kane," I said to the water, "help me." He didn't nod. The puddle just changed texture, from ripple to glass. The lot's storm drains gurgled. The rain braided into strands I could almost count. In my head, a map began to draw itself. Threads from here to there, from there to wherever people waited with porch lights on. Agent Doyle lifted a hand, not in threat, halting. "Stop. Come with me," I said. Not to her, not to Ward, but to the thing I had become. "Don't stay stuck because a circle told you to." Something shifted. The faces in the water lifted their chins, not puppeted this time, not in unison, individually, deciding. The ocean inside my chest opened its mouth. Rain ran uphill. It flowed along the grooves you only see when you know they're there. The seams in asphalt, the hairline cracks that dreams fall through at 3 a.m., the unpainted channels beneath paint. It gathered not into one pool, but into many, each leading away. The parking lot became a board of lines. The storm became a network. I felt the movement pass through me and not stick. The way music moves through a room and doesn't become furniture. A hand closed around my wrist. Ward. If you lose yourself, she said, there won't be